Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Town of Millis Finance Committee meeting. This is Wednesday, April 1st. I am Jody Garzon and we are all zoomed in here. It looks like we have Kathy McGinnis and we have Pete Berube, Craig Schultz, Doug Riley, Joyce Boyardi, Sean Power, and Katie Tu. We also have joining us Chief Barrett, Kim Tolson. We have Wendy, your last name is escaping me. Barry, sorry.
Hey, Wendy.
You're Jackson B on the screen. So
Yeah,
Jennifer Farrar. So we are going to do our best to have an informative meeting here of the Finance Committee tonight in a new format. So please bear with us as we try to figure out how to do this. So tonight we're going to hear from the library about their budget request, and then we're going to hear from Fire and Rescue, from Chief Barrett. We're postponing Jim McKay with the DPW request. Then we're going to consider an increase in the reserve fund, and we're going to approve our minutes. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Kim Tolson to explain to us the library's budget request for fiscal year 2021.
Okay, hello. So I'm going to start by just going over a little bit of background about kind of the library's primary services. So just to kind of get an overview, some of the things that we provide to the community is free access to physical and online collections. The online collections are seeing a lot of use at this current time. Educational, cultural, and recreational programs for all ages, spaces for work, play, and community gathering, free technology access, and kind of pulling all that together is the knowledgeable staff that help kind of access services and navigate collections and information. So looking back at our last full fiscal year 19, I just want to go over a couple highlights. So we did see from fiscal year 19, compared to the previous fiscal year, we saw a 24% increase in full usage, so that's ebooks and audiobooks. A 3% increase in the actual physical items borrowed from the library, and a 6% increase in books borrowed. And we also saw a 9% increase in registered borrowers. So about 57% of Millis residents are library card holders. We also continued to see an increase in library visits. We had over 111,000 total visitors in fiscal year 19, which was slightly more than the previous year. Study spaces are used an average of 70 times a week. And we had 556 public programs for different ages with an average of 24 people per program. We added some new services, including wireless printing, scanning to flash drive, and a notary public on staff. We also received a number of grants, a total of more than $12,000 from Millis Cultural Council, Girls Who Code, Rural Gateways, and Middlesex Savings Bank. And one of kind of our big projects was we wrote a new strategic plan. So that was the result of a long community planning project to create a new strategic plan for fiscal year 21 to 25. We also had one of our current staff take on some new responsibilities as technology coordinator. So she's been doing a lot of new stuff with technology. So then getting to the budget. Here. So really there hasn't been too much change from last year. I guess the biggest increase is you'll see in personnel, which is the result of the increases in the wages from the union contract. So we're at level staffing. We haven't increased our staffing from last year, but that's why that increase is there. And then the other increase I want to point out is our library materials. So library materials need to be 19% of our total budget in order for us to qualify, in order for us to be certified through the Mass Board of Library Commissioners. So that has gone up slightly because of the increase in wages. Any questions so far about that?
Yeah, I have a question, not about the budget, but you said you have 111,000 visitors. Mm-hmm. Is there a way to track how many people, unique individuals, that represents?
So the way we track it, we just have like a basic door counter. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't break it down that much. We can kind of, we can track how many people have library cards that are being used, but there are many people that come in to use the space that aren't necessarily using their library card. So it's a little bit tricky to get that number.
And you said about half the town are card holders right now?
Yeah, what did I say? 60?
Yeah.
54%.
57%.
Mm-hmm. So Craig, just to let you know that with the count of how many people go into the library, we actually did put the door counter in the year after we opened the library, and previous to that, it was all like sampling. It'd be like, we're going to sample on Tuesday. So now at least we have a real count of how many people are going in and out of the building.
I'm going to jump in here for a sec and say that because our folks at home can't see who's talking, if every time someone speaks they can just say who they are, that would be helpful for the recording.
Okay, I will do that. So this is Craig again. So about 4,500 card holders or so. Is that an approximate number? I think there's like 8,000 in the town, and I was just trying to do a little math.
Yeah, that would probably be right. I don't have that number in front of me.
I'm just curious, because this is one of the things I'm looking at with other departments as well. Just, obviously not fire chief, but what's the usage? I'd like to see low usage at some and very high usage at others. It just seems to fall into the high usage.
Get you that
category.
Exact number.
Yeah.
I don't have it in front of me at the moment.
Okay.
This is Jennifer Farrar. I'll just say the number of card holders is not necessarily indicative of families of a mom that'll go and take out for all the kids.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. Usually kids tend to get their first library card when they're about 5. So previous to that, we do have a lot of young people using the library who aren't card holders just because they're a little too young for that responsibility.
All right. Thanks.
Can you talk a little bit about how the Friends of the Library also help support the programs at the library?
Sure. Yeah, so if you are looking at our budget here, you'll notice that there isn't a program line or a line for programming. So the programs that I mentioned, the 556 public programs that we had in fiscal year 19, those aren't funded through our municipal budget. So the Friends of the Library do fundraising on behalf of the library to allow us to provide all of those programs. So some of it is provided by grants, but the Friends provide the majority of that through their fundraising efforts and book sales, membership drive. They also provide sometimes things that are not in our normal budget, like things for the library or updates in technology for things that we need replaced, things that we're looking to add. So They are a huge source of support for us.
I was going to add to this. This is Wendy Berry. The total in fiscal year 19, the non-tax revenue received from was about $27,000, and $24,000 of that was provided by the Friends. So they do $17,000 they provided for programming at the library. Then they also provide museum passes, library furniture when we need furniture replaced, and they provide some funds going toward seeking out grants. They support that as well so that we can seek other ways to fund things at the library.
Thank you.
So that ends up being a little over 6% of the library's budget is basically supplied by the Friends.
That's right, yeah.
That's great.
Madam Chair, this is Pete Berube. Can I ask the group a question?
Go ahead.
If anybody from CAM or anybody from the library, if you could talk a little bit about your wage growth there. Looks to be about 10%, and I understand that you said it was from union negotiations, contract negotiations, which I know you can't talk about too much, but could you just let us know how those personnel growths came about, and if you expect straight line growth, because it looks like about 10% over the last couple of years.
So my understanding, and I wasn't directly involved with this, but my understanding is that this is, the union contract was kind of retroactive to this current fiscal year and last fiscal year. So this increase that we're seeing is from, 3 years. We're just seeing it all at once.
This is Wendy Berry. Pete, the staff at the library, except for our director, are in the same union that the staff at Town Hall are. So that is all done as part of one contract. So we are not doing that. It's Mike who's in charge of, getting that contract solved. So this basically, the increase here is just the culmination of the 3 years that's been kind of waiting to get solved.
Yeah, it looks like, 18 to 19, it looks like several of the years were in the 7 or 8% range. This year was also, one was only 4, but it's not big dollars, but it's big percentages, The move from 19 to 20 was fairly large, and from 17 to 18 was large. The 18 to 19 was only 4%, but it's been closer to 7% the last three of the last 5, or 4 of the last 5.
Madam Chair, Kathy McInnes?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm somewhat confused, and maybe someone on the board can help me out, but I was under the assumption that when a union contract is ratified retro, that isn't included in the line item, the retroactivity. That's a separate item for town meeting to vote on. And what I just heard is that this 178,000 FY21 request includes retroactive salaries. Does anybody know if that's the case?
Yeah, Jody, this is Craig, Kathy. In the past, and I don't know if it's changed since Mr. Aspinwall left, but we used to always vote 2 lines. We used to vote let's call it a 3% or 4% normal rate wage increase in the budget, and then we would do another line for the retroactive amount of 3 or 4% when we approved the contract. Right. So it was no net change to the employee, no net change to the cost to the town, but it spread it a little differently, and a lot of times we'd even vote warrant articles using cash that would set aside cash, for when this is approved, and just the warrant article. But,
So my question is, Madam Chair, Kathy McGinnis again, does this 178,000 that's requested include retroactive pay for the last year?
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
This is Carol Johnston. I'm the Finance Director.
Hey, Ms. Carol.
Hello. I just wanted to clarify with everyone, that number does not include retroactive.
Okay.
And so in the contract that was signed from fiscal year 19 and forward. So the difference for the retro was picked up from the article that was passed either last spring or last fall. So, but when we did the budgets, we didn't have the numbers. So what you're seeing now is it's pretty much a multiplier effect for the actual FY19, then the FY20, now
20, and then that,
FY21.
okay.
So that's really what it is. It's the difference. In some other things would be is if a person had a step increase, and then on top of that a COLA. So that's why it looks like a big impact now, but
Right.
it's realistically not. Thank you very much.
so really that, this is Craig again, so if the raises had been approved in FY19, that 148 would be closer to 148, and let's just use a 3% for the sake of argument. 152 would have been that equivalent salary,
Yes.
and the 161 would be 3% higher than that, or would it be, and then that puts us at a much lower step
Right.
Right.
range.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So we do also have one above level service request, which I can talk about if there are any other questions about the.
No, please go ahead.
So, document to load here. So we are asking for staffing for Thursday evening hours. So this is something that we've requested at the past couple of years. This would extend our Thursday open hours from 4 p.m. We're currently open 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Wednesday, and then Thursdays we close at 4. So we're looking to extend that to 8 p.m., which would be an extra 4 hours per week, and it would make the closing time and opening time consistent on school and work nights. This is something that a request that we get from the public all the time. People are always surprised that we close earlier on Thursdays. So the approximate cost for this would be $6,627 to add the 4 extra hours weekly, and that's the cost for the year. Wouldn't affect any paid benefits or result in any part-time staff becoming full-time benefited staff. Let's see. So, in looking at this, I know that that there may be some the marijuana impact funds, and looking at this, we kind of see this as an option for to kind of engage our younger population and kind of to be in a safe place and to provide opportunities for education and recreation. So we kind of see this as a connection to possibly those funds. Would be, an idea for where that could come from.
This is Wendy Berry. Just to add on to that about this above level request, we've done this request I believe since we moved into the new building, was part of the request. And for people who've been paying attention to the library budget or on the committee since then, there was this kind of there was 3 requests that went along. It was like this, and then there was also one for increasing Monday hours. We used to not open until later on Mondays. And we were able to, when Ms. Tolson came on board, she was able to rework the staffing schedule and figure out a way to cover those hours without adding any budget. So that additional request went away when we figured out how to do that. But this one is the one that we see as being critical in terms of the, and Kim, you can speak to this, that we are literally kicking people out of the library at 4 o'clock on Thursdays, like kids and adults, and like, you know, you need to leave now, like we're not open. And we think that it would really benefit the community to be able to stay open, especially since we have so many programs that run on Thursday nights, that we could stay open and kind of lead straight into the programming from, you know, during the time that we're open, as opposed to closing for 2 hours and then reopening for a program.
This is Craig. I'd like to ask a question of Carol on this one. That marijuana money is not certified yet, is it? We can't, or is it? Can we spend that money that's come in? I was under the impression we couldn't at this budget cycle.
Carol Johnson, Finance Director. No, the money is not certified. We cannot spend it until the fall after the free cash is certified, and it would be part of our free cash. But we are taking requests, as everyone knows, for the use of those funds once they get certified.
Right. I just don't think it's going to happen unless something changes. I don't believe it's going to be available for this budget year, and I believe we've also needed for the police department when we hired those 2 positions. I believe we committed the first $85,000 towards that position. So my concern is I think $6,000 is short money. I think it'd be the best use of that $6,000. One of the best uses for that $6,000. I just don't know that we're going to have anything available, even though we are sitting on literally about $170-something thousand that we've received, but we can't spend until the state certifies, which is incredibly frustrating. But I think that's the reality we're working under. So I don't know that it's going to happen. I think it should happen. I wish there was a way to do it. But until that money becomes available, we can't spend it.
Okay.
I'd like to just add that I think it's absolutely insane that we have the money in our checking account and can't spend it. But that's
I don't think you're going to get any arguments here on that.
Yeah.
This is Jennifer Farrar. When you say it's available in the fall, is there a way that when it becomes available, we can jump on this budget cycle?
I would.
Like mid-year?
That's absolutely possible, but we've done that in the past last year, and I think it's something we try not to do because we try to consider budgets once a year, and this might be a little bit different of a situation because we actually now do have cash that it might make sense to consider. So yeah, it's absolutely possible. It's just something that we've tried to refrain from doing.
The reason I ask is because fall coincides with the time where middle schoolers will be there after school, and it's new middle schoolers who maybe last year weren't at the library. It's always a shock to the parents when their plan is for after school go to the library, a safe place, and they're put out at 4 o'clock, and it's fall and it's dark. And it's just hard on everyone. So if there was going to be an exception, I was just trying to make a point for the exception.
Yeah, and since in this case there'll actually be money in the bank account, not a spending of future funds, it would be an argument that I think we'd be receptive to hearing.
And the magnitude is not that high either. So, you know, if we were able to allocate it at fall town meeting, you know, that might mean that the library would be able to add those hours, you know, pretty quickly into the school year.
Yeah.
Madam Chair,
Let's go ahead, Joyce.
Joyce Boyardi. And I don't know if this is a suggestion that can be taken until funds are available, but would there be any way, since you're finding that the end of the day is needed on Thursday, would there be any way of starting the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, those 4 days, an hour later, as opposed, so that you can accommodate until the money is available, so that you can stay open later? Just start the day a later hour? I don't know.
Yeah.
Just trying to be a little creative.
We thought about different options, but I don't see people responding well to us taking away hours. We currently open at 10 a.m., which, for some people that's a little late if they're coming to the library to work or they're looking for somewhere in the morning to take their kids. That's also when we do a lot of our preschool age programming. So that would be really tough.
Okay.
As someone who is lined up at the door waiting for it to open, I can speak to that. When we had no Wi-Fi at home and I had to go work there.
No, I was just trying to be a little creative, looking outside the box temporarily. One other question, is there the monies that the friends raise through the year, is there any possibility of that taking care of salary for those 4 hours until money's available?
The Friends, I can speak to that. I used to be the finance person on the Friends before I became a trustee. The Friends funds can't go to basic operations. They have to be to specific things. They can't go to things that basically that the town should be supporting as part of running the library.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No.
Just a plug, this is Wendy Berry from the trustees, is the library is still operating. There are a lot of programs going on, so check out the website if you haven't, for all ages. And we have lots of access to different materials right now. So everyone who's shut up at home, go to the library and use some of these great resources that we put in place.
And like the Facebook page.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and let our library folks sign off while we transition. Give me a minute to look back at my agenda.
My battery's saying low, and I don't know why. It's all plugged in.
I've heard that excuse before.
Yeah. I don't know. Does this use a lot of juice more than, I don't know.
Yes, it does, if you're on your phone or a tablet. Yep. All right, next we're going to hear from Chief Barrett about the budget request for fire and rescue.
Good evening, Madam Chair. I presented a PowerPoint. I don't know if you have it in front of you. If you'd like to walk through it, we can start with that, and then I can answer any questions during and after, if that's okay. Okay. So great. Thank you for having me this evening. This is Chief Barrett with the Millis Fire Department. Quickly, I'll just go over the function of the fire department. Our purpose in town is to respond to all emergencies and non-emergency service calls for the residents of Millis. We do fires, motor vehicle accidents, weather-related emergencies, carbon monoxide, ice water rescues, missing persons, and many others. Our staffing, just to update the board, we have 1 full-time chief, 1 on-call deputy chief, 4 full-time lieutenants, 12 full-time firefighter EMTs, 14 on-call firefighter EMTs. And our roles are, I respond, my office hours are Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, but I respond to calls as needed 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. I have an on-call deputy chief who also responds to emergencies as needed. He handles our training, and he is also available to handle meetings or respond to incidents if I'm unavailable. Our full-time members work a 4-group system consisting of 1 lieutenant and 2 firefighter EMTs. They work a 24-hour shift, 24 off, 24 on, and 96 off. It's common practice in the fire service. And then we have a great on-call department that responds to all calls other programs and sub-programs we have, we handle structural firefighting, emergency medical services, ALS and BLS. We do a lot of fire prevention and code compliance, and we're really proud of our fire and public education, CPR, first aid, courses like that. The next slide you'll see is probably the one I'm the most proud of. Has nothing to do with finance, but it's a bit of pride for us. We're a staple in the community. If there's a fundraiser going on, there's a good chance we're at it, hosting it, we're a big part of it. And we take a lot of pride in that. Again, 2019 was a good year for Millis Fire. It was our first year of operating at the advanced life support level completely, and the ability to staff our second ambulance for 98% of our calls that require multiple ambulances. We saw an increase in call volume of 15%. We saw an increase in per call collection rate increase of 42%. Our monthly collection rate increased over 63%. And our projected annual increase for the first year of ALS will be $202,000 over 2019 collections. Now that's a projected revenue because we're at the whim of insurance companies and what we can collect. The medical collection company has a great record, 94% collection rate, and we're on track for that $200,000 over last year. That puts us about $500,000 in ambulance revenue collections. Sure.
Hey, Chief, on that 200,000, is that over, for your EMS, the ALS level, is that for a full year?
That'll be for the full year. So right now we get monthly reports on our collection, and as of this report, if we were projected out at the rate we were going on collection, we would be $200,000 over last year.
Thank you.
We've stayed pretty steady so far. I'm interested to see what happens with collections during this pandemic, but our collection company is still up and running and meeting all the requirements that the state has set for it. Anything else? Some accomplishments that we had this year with the fire department. We received 3 separate grants, one from Maya, our insurance company, for asset management and scheduling software for $5,500. Emergency management preparedness grant, funding to replace multi-gas meters for the fire department for $7,000. And a SAFE grant funding to provide fire prevention to grades pre-K through 5th and fall prevention to our senior citizens for $5,000. We started a junior firefighter program with a high school senior. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, that's been put on hold. We added a deputy chief, on-call deputy chief position. The on-call members that we appointed last year have all became state and nationally certified. With the support of this board and select board, we were able to replace outdated equipment, our turnout gear and SCBAs on a 2-year program, and then we were able to get a part-time department assistant, and that has been very beneficial. And I think the amount of grants that we've been able to obtain is due to the time that I've been able to actually spend on it that the department assistant has freed up for me. So the goals moving forward for the fire department, and the biggest one we have, is to prepare to meet the demand of a lot of the new construction coming to town. On your sheet, you'll see just the ones that I've had listed. 324 units of an over 55 community on Orchard Street, 48 plus units on Acorn Street of over 55, 2 separate 40 plus home developments, a 98 unit 4-story 40B project on Union Street, 2 separate 12 unit 40B projects on Main Street, and a 120 bed memory care assisted living facility. These are the things we're trying to prepare for because currently our call volume has already started to increase due to some of these projects, And startling fact that kind of surprised me was 42% of our calls go to residents over the age of 55. That is with our current residents, and we're about to add a large group that's going to impact us greatly. So we wanted to make everybody aware of those numbers. Do you have any questions up until then?
Chief, Kathy McInnes here, if
Yep.
I might ask.
You can.
Are you able to tell us how many calls you have presently at those over 55 facilities?
I can get those numbers. I don't have them directly. I can tell you that of the 12 units that are finalized and occupied up at Glen Ellen, we've had approximately 18 calls up there already. 2 of them were serious. One of them was a gentleman who was struck by a vehicle up there. So again, the calls are for 20 units are already starting to come in, but we can probably narrow those down if we need to.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Anything else? No? Okay. Again, last year I mentioned very quickly the opportunity for a federal SAFER grant to help us with some staffing. Our goal would be to hire more firefighter paramedics, and the grant works on a 3-year tiered system. The first year, the grant would pay for 75% of the salary cost for the firefighters. Second year would also be 75%. Year 3 would be 35%, and year 4 the town would own the entire cost of the 4 members. We have some numbers you should have in front of you to see. The first one shows total year cost to the town would be $94,000. The big thing is that these grants don't come in until about September, so we probably wouldn't be hiring until January. So we believe that number would be cut in half. From what we've seen from the area communities that have gotten the grant, usually their hires are December or January. So we're planning on probably a 6-month cost for the first year rather than a full 12. With that cost being about $46,000, $47,000, the grant would cover the remaining of the 3 firefighter paramedics, showing a total savings to the town of about $284,000 if we were to use the grant money. Again, the next page will show you a breakdown of.
Sorry, is that the 1-year savings, or is that the is that 1 year that I'm looking at there? That would be the cost saved in the first year.
That's the first year. Yep.
Okay.
The next page, Craig, you'd see the difference between the grant funding with the grant and without the grant. And I think the biggest thing is the ability to fund 4 firefighters by the town would take us a lot longer than 3 years. Just about a year and a half ago, we were hiring 1 firefighter per year to try to get to the status we are. This would be a one-stop shop, and we would, at the end, have to incur all the costs. But I think the biggest number you'd see is the savings that we could get with the grant. It's about $751,000 that the town wouldn't have to pay for those first 3 years.
Yeah, I guess my thought is I think it's a great idea. I'm concerned about the $477 that we're going to have to pay every year after that. That's,
and as well as we are. My hope is we can go back a little bit to what we're starting to generate in that ambulance revenue.
Right.
If we can keep that number $200,000 over what we're already contributing to the general fund. And on top of that, the additional calls that we're going to see, add to that with 4 more firefighters, hopefully we can reduce the amount of overtime that we're incurring. Right now, once we have 1 call, the shift is out on the call. Anything further requires overtime to call people back. With that 4th firefighter on the shift, we're able to run 2 ambulances, which is our primary goal, and then only call back the necessary firefighters we need to staff the next call.
Yeah.
So we should see a reduction in that.
And this is Craig. I guess my concern, it's much like the police officers we funded through the free cash. I don't really care about year 1 and 2. I mean, that's nominal. That can probably work out. It's when you get to year 4, 5, 6, and 7,
Yep.
there needs to be a plan that says we're not just adding 477 to the budget. Because we're going to get more money in, that's sure. As I said, we've got 177 sitting in the bank right now that we can't spend. But if you can save on the ambulance, if you can do all those other things, if there's other revenue sources, it's not selling me on year 1 and 2. I have to understand how we sustain it for year 4, 5, and 6.
And I completely understand. Yep.
Yeah. So keep working.
Yeah. And again, we're hoping that, we see, again, we don't welcome or want more calls, but we see them coming. The addition of our paramedics it's already paid off with our mutual aid to other communities. We've signed recent billing agreements with mutual aid communities to send our paramedics over to their towns because they're unable to provide the service. So now we're starting to get 50% of their calls when our paramedics respond up there.
Madam Chair, Kathy McInnes. Chief, when you send the mutual aid over there, do we get any remuneration from that town?
Yep, so that's what I was trying to say. I guess I didn't say it clear enough. So we signed billing agreements. So if our paramedic goes and does a call with Medway, let's say, we would get 50% of the call payment that they would get. So that's a part of the agreement.
Okay, once again, Madam Chair, Kathy McInnes, if I could, Chief, I remember the grant request last year. What I wish I saw here, and maybe it's here, but I checked everything today, and this sort of really, I'm new to all of this in such detail, but I don't see where your overtime line is and how you could, what I'm hearing is that because of the over 55, you're going to be getting more calls. But what I'm not hearing is that you were just saying you're calling in overtime. What is that overtime line item if you're going over it? Like we've seen a few other departments describe it and could justify extra staff. But I haven't been convinced yet that getting a grant for 3 years is justification for 4 firemen. You went from 2 firemen requested in the grant last year to 4 now, Chief. And I don't see where it's written down here that it's justified other than what if. Now, I hear Glen Ellen has stopped, unless you've already put money down for a property, they've stopped taking it in. And who knows how long that's going to ask for. So it's going to last for. And I'm not familiar with the one up on Acorn Street. But I'm just wondering, why do we get extra staff, Chief, and members of the FinCom because we're getting a discount for 3 years and then 400 and something thousand the 4th year we own? Or are we getting it because it's going to decrease the overtime that the department has, Chief? Thank you.
Yeah, Kathy, this is Craig again. I just looked, the overtime line is 75,000 right now is the budget. So,
yes, I thought that.
Yeah, so it's...
which hasn't been requested for Madam Chair, for the last few years. So I want to hear just from the Chief now to see what he feels about it. Thank you.
Sure, I'd be more than happy to answer that. So for the last 5 years, we've had to come back to this board requesting funds to cover those costs.
Okay.
Of overtime and shift coverage. It's shown in every budget that we've had the last 5 years. And again, this isn't just about saving overtime. This is about providing a service for the town. And it's not just to the over 55 communities. Our call volume is going up across the board. The impact is 42% of those calls already go to over 55 members of the community. As for your statement on Glen Ellen, it is not stopped. They're still under construction. They've worked out agreements with the town, the state. Production is still going on. They had to meet requirements set forth by the state Board of Health, the building committee, myself, police chief, and construction should start back up probably within a day or two. They met all the requirements as of yesterday, so we should.
I'm sorry, I just heard today that it stopped, so thank you.
Yep. So again, we're trying to meet requirements that are set forth by us. Last year, their request was also for 4. 2 doesn't make any sense for us. If we would add 2 members to our current force, it'd be hard to try to fit them into the group system. We will run 4 different group systems, so we need 1 firefighter per group to make this work. Again, with the amount of requests we're getting for 2nd medicals, 3rd medicals, 4th medicals, having the 4 members on staff ensures that our ambulance is rolling out the door quickly and it's rolling out efficiently so that we're not paying so much overtime. Again, our goal is to provide the service and provide it promptly, and I think we can do that with this grant. And I completely understand the board's concern about the year 3 and 4 as well as it is mine. But I will say, with some pride, I proposed paramedics to this board for 5 years, and it's all come to fruition, and everything I promised you that was going to happen happened last year. I can stand by that. I can show you the increase in revenue, show you the increase in call volume, I can show you how we staffed it. I'd be happy to provide you with any more information you need, but it's all right there on the paper.
So I have a question for you, Chief. So if we were to increase the staffing by these 4 individuals, would we also need to increase the amount of equipment that we have? Would that, increase other budget line items as well for future years?
Right, great question. So the thing that we have, the luxury we have here in Millis is we hire from within. So we cut down on a lot of those costs. Our members are already members of the department. We promote them from our call department. So most of them have all of the gear that's required, so we don't have to buy any new gear. We have the uniforms that are required, so we don't have to buy new uniforms. Portable radio, all the big cost items are already in place. There would be, part of the union agreement, they would have clothing allowances and things like that, where we would see some increases. But for the big ticket items, that's all purchased because they're already members of the department.
Okay, thank you. Craig, did you have a question?
I haven't had a chance to look at each of these slides in detail. What would be really nice for me is to see a buildup of how you get to $400,000 and something of payback on this. Just on a slide that says ambulance fees would increase by $200,000, and I guess we're halfway there on the first line. But if there's not a buildup to get to that 477, I can't dispute the desire or the fact that it would make things much better to have this.
Yep.
But as I pointed out before, with every dollar we spend on this, that's a dollar we can't spend on something else. And we've committed to $120,000 in police, and we have no funding for it at the moment, and now this is coming online.
Yep.
I just want to make sure we have a funding source that can kick in at the appropriate time too,
That's right. Yep. So again,
Sure.
Go ahead. Somebody asked a question. So again, Craig, I think you pointed out, just with the revenue now, we kind of can cover year 1 and 2, 3 and 4 are where it becomes a question. And again, I can prepare that information for you, and we can try to, show how some of those costs can be deferred to cover that final cost at the end of the 4.
Yeah, and not to do it, and just a couple things on it. So you got $75,000 overtime now. You've also built $60,000 in overtime, or $80,000 in overtime when you hire these staff. Yeah, I would expect that $80,000 might not be needed if you're hiring enough staff.
Exactly.
So just really check your numbers, because
Sure.
it's not going to be an emotional driver for me. It's going to be to the numbers work. That's what I need to see.
Sure. Yeah.
Madam Chair, this is Steve.
Yes, go ahead.
I've got a couple questions, one for Chief and maybe one for you to farm out to yourself or the other committee members. Chief, are you aware whether or not any other towns are pursuing ALS capability right now?
So Medfield and Medway, again, like us, were the last two. They've got to that, but unfortunately for them, they've hired from out of town. So any second or third medicals, they get nobody on callback, and that's why we're lucky enough to be able to get our members back and send them over to Medway. Again, that just kind of leads to another thing. So a bunch of communities locally have got the grant. Medway last year, Norfolk last year, Franklin the year before, Walpole, Westwood. So a lot of communities are doing it, and I think it's the same thing. They're going to show that they can pay for it at the end.
And then my second question, Madam Chair, is kind of the mechanics of this. How do you execute a multi-year budget increase? Whether it gets voted in year one, you're committing multiple years of operating budget. Wouldn't, much like, I guess, almost like a school bus lease, would that require a couple of different dedicated articles in the warrant?
Madam Chairman? Yeah.
Yes.
No, it wouldn't. I mean, it's going in with the full realization. Yeah. Going with the full realization that when you vote this, you are actually voting down the road. You're not voting. It's not going to be multiple articles. This is one article. It's like the police. When we voted them in, that 120,000 was a commitment or lay the police off if we don't have enough funds to make it happen. And that's what this would be too. That's why it's so important to see the future years, not the immediate number,
And that would be priority one for me, is to make sure that we can fund it in the future, because it's not something we would want to take on that we would hire them for 3 years and then the fourth year lay them off. So I would 100% agree that you've got to make sure that the funding would be there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Sorry, Madam Chair. So the big reason for this, to present it to you, is, again, I don't want to proceed with the grant, spend the time on it and try to get it if it's something we can't do. So the grant, it starts, again, with the federal delay, probably next month. So again, that's why I bring it to you now, just to get support. If it's not there, then we don't pursue it, kind of like we did last year.
Yeah, I would assume that a lot depends on the pace of new construction in town as well, because that's going to determine the increase in your call volume, probably more than anything.
Madam Chair, that's why I try to highlight it with that slide. That's, it's the biggest thing we have to deal with. It's great for the community. It's what, it's going to help us with taxes, but it's also going to impact public safety. For the last year or two, we've been trying to get a public safety advisory committee for new construction. Police, fire, DPW, building department, they're all going to be impacted with all this construction, and we really need to try to get ahead of it.
And particularly an assisted living facility where anytime, a resident falls, they're calling the ambulance to come and help them. I'm not sure that everyone realizes that. Your call volume will skyrocket.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because that's one of the things that we pushed there with the study. Initially they said we would see an additional 5 or 6 calls per week. After talking to multiple chiefs that have the same kind of thing, you're looking at 8 to 10. Those are medicals, not just police calls, fire calls, medicals, another 8 or 10 a week. And again, it could be as simple as a lift assist, because a lot of the staff do not pick patients up. It's something that we're hoping to work into an agreement with the facility that, we have similar things. So many false alarms, we're able to, invoice them, a certain amount. And I think we would try to do the same thing if, we started to see a large amount of lift assist. Hopefully it's something we can work into an agreement and take a little while for the department to respond to.
And Madam Chair, we already hear. We also have to take into consideration our population is getting older, despite the 55 and older communities coming up. We I don't know what percentage we have of over 55 in the town, but I know that 70% are over 30 and up. So that's something that we have to take in consideration as well.
Yeah, and Madam Chairman, I think that the growth is also the way it will be funded. So if that growth is really going to continue and those funds exist, it's just, as I keep saying, you can only spend those dollars once. If we spend them on police, if we spend them on council and agent, if we're going to spend them on fire, if we're going to spend them for enhanced rec department and all, you can only spend the dollars once. So seeing a comprehensive budget from the selectmen that talks about their priorities over the next several years, and I know they can't speak for future selectmen, but they can talk about where they see us going. That would be helpful, because if I'm going to get the chief's request, it's going to cost me $477,000 in 4 years, and the council on aging budget is going to cost me something in 3 or 4 years, and the rec department budget they're all pushing for. At some point, the money stops, and that's what we have to figure out. And it has
Madam Chair.
Ms. McGinnis?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, I want to just touch base and inform everybody about this, the very worthy Public Safety Committee that you talked about, that was discussed with the selectmen 3 years ago. And just to review, it was all the people that Chief Barrett said. And, I implore you, Chief, to once again go to the town administrator and push for this, because like our chairman just said, we don't know what that over 55 will be bringing, and you could call from different towns as a committee using the town staff to help you. But my other question regards the grant, the firefighter paramedics. What will you be hiring, Chief? Firefighters or paramedics?
It's one and the same. Our department, you hire a paramedic, that's a firefighter. We don't have the luxury of having separate, so you have to do the first emergency.
We're not going to have the firefighter and then send them to school.
No. Again, that's the luxury of hiring from within. We're getting, because we do such a great job of training our call members, when they get on the department, there's no training, no fire academy, no paramedic course. They're coming as firefighter paramedics trained. And again, I think that's a luxury.
They're coming in as licensed paramedics already?
Because they've seen the movement of the department, we've had 4 on-call members go and take paramedic courses.
Yeah, I haven't heard you mention that for a while, and I'm glad you did to speak to that, because that says a lot about your group.
Yep. Yeah, we're very proud of them. And again, we have multiple that have gone and got their EMT. They understand that, EMS is really the fire department primary job. It's 80% of what we do is medical, and everybody's preparing for that. And, again, I applaud our staff for taking that on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then one other thing, if I might, Madam Chair, is now you can see why a few of us were really, and Chief Barrett would appreciate this, that the real estate taxes from Glen Ellen et al. Would go strictly to, the public safety, and because we see what a raise that this would be, and if money for that was earmarked for that. But that's for another day again. Thank you.
Yeah. And Madam Chairman, I think this is why having a comprehensive plan for what the selectmen want to do, because if I knew that I was looking at a $477,000 much needed paramedic bill,
right,
I would have thought long and hard about the $120,000 police bill, because that has absolutely no correlation to Glen Ellen. I mean, we're bringing in those people. They're not going to be a police call. The police might arrive, but it's going to be the paramedics. It's going to be the paramedics showing up at all those places. So I would be much more enthusiastic if I hadn't just spent $120,000 I don't have.
There you go.
About this, Yeah.
So again, just to speak
up for my again, that's what I'm trying to say.
Again, to speak up for my good friend Chief Sapphire, they're seeing a large increase because again, the people who are moving in there.
Right.
The people that are moving in there, they call on the police department quite a bit, more than he expected.
Well, and I don't doubt that, but my thought would be, if we knew all of this coming at once, it would give us the chance to evaluate all at once. So I don't want to hear about the police 1 year, the fire the next year, and council on aging and rec department the 4th year. I'd kind of like to hear what the plans are.
And the DPW.
Yeah, goes without saying, Kathy.
Greg, we figured you'd be used to it by now.
Yeah, right. Usually there's a little bit more all at once. It's not these big giant increases each year. Yeah, we're in a unique position where people are realizing there is money.
Of course, the chief knows, oh, go ahead.
Craig, we're gonna take baby steps. We have a capital improvement committee. That was a big step, so.
It was.
Hopefully this is the next step.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But like we said, Madam Chair, when I heard about the police, you know, and Chief Barrett, you'd know that too. If there comes a time when there's layoffs, you know.
Yeah, let's hope we're not facing that anytime soon, but we have to be prudent with how we're spending money and how we add staff, because we definitely don't want to be in that position.
No, it's not fair.
So, Chief, how about if we turn to your budget for fiscal year 21?
Sure. So on the salary side, it is all contractual. There's an agreement between the professional firefighters of Millis and the town. They got their, I think it's a 2.5% raise. Our call members get raises per the personnel plan, and I don't think that's been set yet. So on the salary side, that's the big increases. On expenses, we did see, we do have some increases under our EMT certification. So again, one of the big moves are the state's requirement for emergency medical reports to be done electronically. We've been doing them for a while, but they've increased the requirements. We bought a software that makes it much easier for us to use, gets the information that's required by state mandate, but it's got an annual fee of about $1,500, so we had an increase there. Again, training requirements, different requirements and mandates from the state and national have required us to pour more out of department training. So we had an increase of about $2,200 there. Supplies and expenses, as with anything, supply and demand. Again, with all the call volume going up, it's quite different from what we've done in years past. We've seen a big uptick in replacement for medical supplies. It's still one of the things that I would love to pull out of the budget and break down. We've been trying to track our medical spending so that hopefully in the next budget we're able to pull that out and just have a line item just for medical supplies so we can keep a better eye on it. But the things we've seen have been costly replacements, and a supply an expensive line item. We're requesting an increase of $6,000. Again, with a lot of the requirements for technology, we've improved with iPads for the members when they do inspections, when they go on calls. That comes with a licensing fee, so we increased that by $3,000. Again, clothing and uniforms for our full-time members and our call members, we had an increase of $3,000. A big one for us is the equipment and preventative maintenance contract that we're trying to split with the police department. We recently had, to be honest, a mouse infestation at our remote radio site. It took down about $12,000 worth of equipment. We had a preventative maintenance contract. A lot of it would have been covered. They would have been take care of it. So now we have to, come up with $11,000 to fix a public safety radio system. Unfortunately, the preventative maintenance contract is $10,000. So me and the chief said we would put it in and say that we would split it. We realize it's quite a bit, but we at least wanted to put it out to the board so they had an option. Equipment repairs we're doing very well on. We have the increase we've been doing is about $1,000 so that we can stay ahead of it. A big one is our maintenance to fire alarm cost. I have set a requirement for December of 2020 to remove all of the hardwired copper system that's in town. It's very costly to keep up with. On average, every year, it costs us about $10,000 to keep it up and running and repaired. So as of December, we're hoping to remove that. We're not even hoping, we're in the process, and go to a radio box system. So we're hoping everything goes correctly within the next year. give it another year to kind of clean it up. We're hoping we can remove that from the budget entirely. Once we go to a radio box system, there's no maintenance fees. It falls on the owner of the radio box to kind of pay for and maintain. So we hope to do that. Again, vehicle supply and repair, we're doing an increase of $5,000 for more preventative maintenance contracts. As you're all aware, we did have an incident with one of our engines. And again, we're hoping with a good preventative maintenance plan, we can reduce those costs. I think that's it for spending. Now we can go to above the request if you'd like.
Any questions on that?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go to above level service.
So under the equipment, detail, and capital replacement, again, as I stated earlier in the presentation, we had a 2-year plan to replace our Scott Air Pack bottles and our firefighters turnout gear. We've done a great job, and we've been able to keep costs down by buying in bulk. So this would be year 2 for our Scott Air Pack bottles. We need to replace 12 bottles only, not packs, for $12,000. Our firefighters turnout gear will be year 2. We need to replace 13 sets. And just to remind the board, under OSHA requirements, the gear is only good for 10 years, and we're on year 9. So we're trying to replace the gear now so that we stay within OSHA requirements. So that's 13 sets of gear for a request of $36,000. Additionally, we have a large diameter hose. Again, has expiration dates of 15 years. The hose that we're looking to replace is from 2005, and that would be for $15,000. I believe that's all I have. One of the things that I was happy to let you know is that on the capital replacement plan, we did have $35,000 set aside for the replacement of our gas meters, and under the grant, we're able to remove that from the capital plan because we're able to buy them on the grant, so that will come off next year's request.
Okay, great.
Chief Barrett.
Yes.
We are here, Madam Chair. How much grant money do you bring in?
So on the pages before, total, let me see if I can get it for you. Come on. Just gotta get to the page, sorry.
No problem.
So this year we brought in just about $20,000 roughly.
Do you have somebody there that can help with grant writing? I know that Chief Sophia does an awful lot of his own grant writing, but do you have somebody there that could help you with grant money?
No, so again, I highlighted that with the getting the department assistant this year did free me up time to apply for a lot of these grants. Grants that we may not have gotten if I wasn't able to focus on them. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions?
Madam Chair, this is Pete. I've got a quick one. Pete Ruby, Chief, on your Form 5 equipment detail, the newer replace, and you've got the 2 years, 14 years, 17 years. Is that the standard cycle, or is that respective to the specific piece of equipment years until replacement?
To the specific piece of equipment for replacement years.
Thank you.
Other questions?
So I will just say, Greg, I'm sure you're going to see it, and we can discuss it right now. We do have things coming up on the capital plan for replacement. We do have empty call firefighter spots. Again, to kind of back up the spending down the road, I would forego some of these capital things because boots on the ground are more important than the equipment. The only one that we really need to focus on would be the replacement of the second ambulance. It's going to get to a point that it's costing us too much with as much as it's running. So we would want to keep that on the capital replacement plan at some interval.
Madam Chairman? Yeah, as Chief, since capital funds don't come out of operating funds, it's a noble offer, but they're two different pots of money.
It's worth a shot.
It was. Now, I was actually playing with the spreadsheet right now. We can talk more about it. I'm eager to see what the impact would be and how this could possibly be done.
Sure.
I would like to
Chief,
work with you on that.
Madam Chair, Kathy McGinnis, Chief, is there any other piece of equipment like less than an ambulance that you could use? Because rather than sending something that is, has to slide out and everything, is there some sort of like below kind of vehicle?
For a
call where you must send an ambulance all the time. It's not like someone called and said, oh, my mother fell and can't get up.
Right, so the problem is under our state protocols, for those type of calls, an ambulance has to go just in case, we could say it would just be a lift assist, and our luck, it could be something else. So our state, they have a strict protocol that it has to go to those calls.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It looks like you have an engine that is getting to the point that it's aging out as well. I assume that the capital planning committee is reviewing all of this and kind of putting their priority list together, and we'll see that in future years. Okay, go ahead, Pete.
So as the rep on the capital planning committee, I did have a question. I was holding on to it, but now I'll ask it. Chief, are you providing your updates to Carol Johnston? And if Carol Johnston's still on the line, maybe she can comment to confirm whether she has any updates. We certainly believe we have all of these from all the departments, but if there are changes, and I've made note of some of them, for instance, the gear that Chief was talking about earlier that he got by a grant, I've made a note to make sure that I take that to the committee and at least get the question to update the data and the spreadsheets. But Chief, have you communicated regularly any updates that you have?
I haven't. I assumed we would have been meeting with the capital committee, and at that time, that's when I would have provided an update. No,
yeah, I think that's the right answer. That's fine.
Somebody's kettle going off?
I guess you some
hot
feedback.
body.
Any further questions for the chief on what he's presented?
No.
All right, thank you, Chief. If we have any further questions, we'll have Deirdre get in touch with you.
Great, thank you. Have a good night. Thank you again.
Yep, well done.
All right. Jim McKay has asked to postpone his meeting with us because he's tweaking his budget still. So the next item for us to consider is a Finance Committee request to consider an increase in the reserve fund. So I'm going to pull that up. Make it so it's big enough so I can see it.
Jody, sorry, it's Deirdre here. So I don't know why it didn't come up on the budget, but so for FY21, the reserve fund was budgeted for $50,000. And I know someone had voiced a concern whether going forward the committee would consider increasing it to the typical $100,000 for FY21. So that's all.
Okay, thank you, Deirdre.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe I didn't download the right thing. So I don't know if that's something that we want to talk about tonight, or if we want to talk about it in consideration of all the other budget requests. But considering the number of requests that we've had over the past couple of years to do reserve fund transfers to cover certain budget inadequacies, particularly the building department. We've also had fire department. I'm sure there's others that I'm not remembering. 50,000 has been pretty small in order to be able to adequately cover that over a year. But I'll open it up for any other comments or thoughts.
And Madam Chairman?
Yes.
This is Craig. My thought is I would rather see them budget the building department correctly or more correctly. We know they're coming back in instead of giving us another 50,000. I'd rather see the money go into a line that we know is going to be woefully underfunded. Building department comes to mind. Police overtime comes to mind, and let the departments reflect the true cost of running the department instead of using the reserve fund as a way to cover a budgeting shortfall, except for an emergency. It should only be used for an unforeseen, unexpected emergency spend. That's the design of it. And if we funded building inspectors for the last 3 years out of it, I'm foreseeing and expecting that we'll be doing that next year, unless they, correct the budget for the building inspectors. So I think it's become a way that we can put things into a budget that doesn't show up in the department.
Madam Chair? Ms. Pete?
Yes, go.
I would definitely agree with what Craig said, and I would amplify it by saying that over the past few years, we've put more resources in our ability and time and effort in our ability to have good budgets, whether those requests are for operating budget funds or for one-time needs. We've all, and many of the departments have been given resources and invested a lot of time, and in some cases, taxpayer dollars to be able to do that better. And that'd be another reason to leave it at $50,000 and not have that safety net get bigger.
And fund the budgets correctly.
Madam Chair, Kathy
Yes.
McGinnis. My only concern is you give them money and they spend it even if they don't sometimes need to. I don't know of many departments that return money, but I'm new at this. Maybe they do.
They do. I mean, the free cash, that's where free cash comes from. There are several. Yeah.
Okay.
It can kind of be hidden. It's not well tracked because it all does go into free cash.
But we do get a breakdown each year on that, and we can ask for that again this year.
Absolutely.
Be surprised.
Madam Chair, where is the request coming from? Who is an advocate for this?
I think we had discussed it as a committee, particularly when most of the reserve fund was allocated pretty much after we approved last year's budget.
Yeah, I think I commented that we don't have enough, and we either have to increase the reserve fund or fund the budgets in full. And I'm settling back on funding the budgets appropriately.
Well, it doesn't have to be 50 or 100 either. It can be 75, which we've had some years as well.
I've lost the agenda. Closed a window by accident. Let me find it again.
You need another screen.
I have two. I closed one. Third one's on order, Kathy.
It'll be a delivery in 2 months now instead of Friday.
This is a critical need. Otherwise, I'm going to go blind.
All right, so I'll hold off on, what we want to do on that just now. I think it'll be more important as we review a bigger picture. So maybe we'll just leave it at 50,000 now, and as we get closer to finalizing the budget, we can review whether we want to up that or just keep it at 50.
Jody, you're staggeringly close to being on agenda time schedule here. This is phenomenal.
Usually it's just by luck.
Let's not jinx it.
Exactly. Let's
It's written.
let's look at the minutes from our last meeting, which seems like a lifetime ago.
No, I kept looking. Is it really then?
Yeah.
Back when we could be in the same room together.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve them as written. This is Craig.
Yeah, second. Okay.
Did they go over voting procedures with you, Jody?
No. Well, not that I remember.
On the elementary school building committee, we were sent an email with what the items were, and each of us had to respond. I don't know if that's the process for this or if that's only the process for paying bills, but I didn't know if there's a special procedure. And we do roll call votes by name.
It's probably the cleanest if we do it that way, although,
Yeah, a roll call vote probably.
probably. I would assume if it's unanimous, then we just say it's unanimous.
Perfect.
Craig's been watching a lot of the House and Senate federal.
Of course, you can just do it by reaction, thumbs up.
Is there a smiley?
I believe there is. There's a clap. All right.
Just put a thumbs up. Someone did.
That was me.
Oh,
She's an advanced user.
Yeah. Like I said, this is my third meeting today on
Yeah,
Zoom.
I got it too.
on Zoom, really?
Yes. All right. So, all in favor of, it's been moved and seconded to approve our minutes from the March 4th Finance Committee meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Motion carries unanimously.
All right.
We shall do it that way. And then, does anyone have any additional business that we need to discuss?
Madam Chair, I do,
Yes.
and it's something that you're quite aware of. I don't know at some point if, and I'd be willing to do a draft for you, but to advise the board about the incident that we met with the consulting group on regarding the allocation of DPW expenses, salary expenses to the various enterprise groups.
I think, sorry, it's Deirdre again. I think, Jim, the report may be back prior to next week's meeting. And, I think somehow it'll probably be addressed then, if the report is back. Does
Yeah,
that
that's
kinda
what I've been
answer the
waiting
question?
on,
Sorry.
for that report to kind of funnel through the different committees to get to us. I don't think we're the first line in that, but that will be part of our discussion with the DPW, definitely. But thank you.
Thank you.
Sometimes it's hard to remember all these things. All right, so Deirdre has some new important dates on the agenda where we're looking at a Springtown meeting of Monday, June 8th, with pre-town meeting on June 3rd, that our report to the residents would go out June 1st. So our final recommendations have to be done by May 20th. So that does give us some time to continue to review these. Maybe at some point it'll be in the same room together. But I would guess for the foreseeable future, we'll be doing it this way. We'll be hearing from the town administrator and certainly the town finance director, kind of where we are with the budgets and projections and what have you. But for now, we're looking at meeting most likely in this format through April. And Deirdre will be sending out the future agendas, and we'll get better at this as we go. But I think that's yes, Ms. McGinnis.
All 6 p.m.?
For now, yes. If 6 can work, it allows our folks at Town Hall to leave a little earlier. I don't have commuting time anymore.
Get out of pajamas.
It's 10 steps, so it's a little easier. Harder in the sense that my family's eating dinner over there, but All right. Any final business that we need to attend to?
Madam Chair, this is Pete.
Yes, Pete.
This is Pete Ruby. What is the status of the article? Is it closed? Is the timeline pushed out on articles, things like that?
The warrant?
The warrant, I'm sorry.
My understanding is that the warrant is still closed. Maybe it will be reopened for additional articles in the future, but it's not just standing open as far as I know.
Right, that's my understanding too. They can reopen it on a meeting and then close it again if there's something important.
I think they're waiting on a bylaw for something. I forget what it was about. I used to remember.
Timelines have certainly shifted, so we do have some time here. It's a little more cumbersome to review things this way, but we'll get through it.
And I guess the last thing was where we left off March 4th. I think we had just agreed, or we had voted on our 65-35 that we were going to review the budget per Craig's proposal at the 4%, and that the select board was going to proceed with 65-35. Has there been any more communication or discussion along those lines? What are we going to do?
I have not heard anything from them at this point. I would say we had our discussion and kind of the methodology that we're looking at, and we are waiting for a select board recommended, requested budget with the town administrator's recommendations, and then we'll have our lens that we look at that.
I believe that's correct. I mean, what I've heard is they're proceeding with what they voted, and they'll submit something, and then we'll have to decide how we evaluate it. I know the school is going at the 4% growth, so that's what they'll submit.
Yeah. Okay.
And a lot of it is contingent upon this marijuana money, whether it is or not, because we either have funds or we have a problem. It's feast or famine at that point.
Yeah. It is very frustrating to have money in the bank that we cannot allocate.
Yes.
Because a form hasn't been certified.
Well, free cash, yeah. It's a new experience.
I know.
Yeah.
Just when you thought you understood everything about the state, they come up with something new.
And there's always another hoop to jump through.
Yep.
All right.
All right, is it time for a motion to dismiss, Madam Chair?
I believe there is.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thumbs there, Jody.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jody.
See you next week.
Yeah.
Take care.